Coming up this weekend, the former Ultimate Fighter Season 11 winner, back when it was on Spike TV. Back when Spike TV was hitting you with shows like Mansers, Pros vs. Joes, and 1,000 Ways to Die. Well, Court McGee, he's looking to do it again. He's looking to turn back another up-and-comer in this welterweight division. And I've got a lot of crazy things to say about Court McGee. None of which are that he's like the nicest guy in all of MMA. That has to be said. But for Court McGee, it's just wild. Like, you look at his overall UFC record, it's 10-8 since he won the show, or including the time that he won the show. He's only been finished one time in his whole career. It was by Santiago Ponzinibbio. Never been submitted. Only been TKO'd. And it's been crazy to look at his last two fights. He beat Ramiz Brahimaj his last time out. Do you want to pepper in a 10-8? I don't care. You could. He beat Claudio Silva before that. Some losses. Carlos Condit, Sean Brady, Diego Lima. But you look at Court McGee today. You look at Court McGee in 2011. Fight in, fight out. You know exactly what you're going to get out of Crusher McGee, right, Matt?
You really do. He's going to pressure forward with some fairly basic boxing combinations, if we're all being honest. Not much of a kicker, which has always sort of been the kryptonite of Court McGee. If you're a great distance striker who has good footwork, you're kind of built to beat somebody like McGee, who just kind of plods forward. Listen, I think everybody enjoys watching Court McGee fight. I know he's not really a finish-heavy fighter, but still, his fights normally are quite entertaining because he does eat a few shots before he is able to get into the range where he has the most success. But the real question you have to ask yourself, or what your trainer should be asking you if you're about to sign the bout agreement for a Court McGee fight, is, hey, do you own a treadmill? Because you better if you fight Court McGee. I couldn't imagine how exhausted you must feel after fighting to a decision with a guy like Court McGee, because the pressure he's able to put on guys from the first minute to the last minute of a fight is continuous. And it doesn't matter how many shots he's eaten, he's still going to march forward no matter what. And this fight against Jeremiah Wells is going to be interesting, because if he isn't able to get this fight to the mat, I do worry about McGee's ability, especially at that kicking range, because it's not like Wells is Yair Rodriguez at range, but he will go to the body and he will go to the legs quite a bit. And those are going to be two tools that are definitely going to slow down Court McGee and his two massive advantages in this fight, which is not really his footwork in a fancy kind of way, but his footwork and just his pressure in general. Those things are heavily reliant on his own cardio. And if he does start to get his legs and body start to beat away at a little bit, it will start to slow Court McGee down, which isn't something I ever thought I'd say. But at 37 years of age, we do have to expect a decline in his cardio at some point. But who am I? Maybe he'll just never get tired till he's like 45. And he'll just keep on fighting to decisions every 6 months.
Court McGee got a knockdown his last time out against Ramiz Brahimaj early. Whoever thought that was going to happen. And you do look at it for McGee. Career win over Brad Tavares on the show, The Ultimate Fighter. Again, same network that had Mansers, and he also has a win by split decision over Robert Whittaker. You know, all-time middleweight.
Shaq Versus was my favorite Spike TV show.
Lots of wild stuff. What was the other one? Deadliest Warrior? That was another
Deadliest Warrior, Ink Masters, Bar Rescue. Like, Spike TV had a run that you could put up against anybody's for about a 3-year stretch.
And then they added Bellator, and then it became Paramount. Either way, we're not here for the history of Spike. We're going to talk about Jeremiah Wells. This guy, former CES and CFFC welterweight champ. You look at it, inside of a calendar year in the UFC, 2 wins, both of them by finish. And I mean, listen, a big-time win against Warlley Alves where he decided to throw caution to the wind, put his head and his arms out there and just was able to land them tangs, as Shannon Sharp would say, on Warlley Alves. Finished him in that one. Took on Blood Diamond his last time out. Matt, I hope you went back and watched that fight, but in the first 5 seconds, what in the flying fuck was he doing?
Jeremiah Wells' controller got disconnected and he just started like walking towards not really, he jogged, forgot where he was, fell into the cage, and then immediately won the fight, luckily. But I was worried that Jeremiah Wells was like something seriously. Remember Andre Fiallo? This isn't something we should joke about, because he seriously had like a breakdown in the middle of the Chael Sonnen fight, but I was worried.
Chael Sonnen fight?
You don't remember that? Yeah.
Oh, I thought you just said Andrea Fiallo.
Sorry, Andre. Who was the guy who was considered the best middleweight in the world? I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Chael Sonnen fought him in WEC. Andre Fiallo, I'm almost certain, was his name. We can look this up as Craig has a keyboard next to him. Go ahead. But anyways, he had this like breakdown in the middle of the cage. Warlley Alves had a performance, I remember, that was really odd in the UFC. It was just weird. Every now and then you get a case where it's just something weird happens in the cage, and Jeremiah Wells, for whatever reason, decided to sprint headfirst into the cage and then proceeded to beat the brakes off Blood Diamond. So it really depends on how much stock you put into that fight and how highly you did regard Blood Diamond back.
Paulo Filo?
Paulo Filo, thank you.
You don't have to shout in our ears.
Paulo Filo. Okay, Craig, of all the people. Paulo Filo at the time was considered the best middleweight in the world. But when he fought Chael Sonnen, and Chael Sonnen considers this his best win, it's very, like, off-putting to go back and watch that fight. Filo's, like, talking to people who aren't even there, not even paying attention to Chael Sonnen. It's a very, very strange performance, but that's what I thought we were getting into when Jeremiah Wells had his weird controller disconnect.
Yeah, he ran into the cage, grabbed it, and then turned around. Blood Diamond's coming at him, but again, in that fight, Blood Diamond went, and I want to make sure I get it right. 1 of 3 in total strikes. He got taken down, ridden out for the whole round, and Wells was able to get the submission. Jeremiah Wells is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Now, listen, both these guys very accredited in Jiu-Jitsu, but for Wells, it's under Daniel Gracie at Henzo's in Philly. Sean Brady's at that gym. Sean Brady beat Court McGee, a little bit of a connection. But in this fight, it is odd, because for Court McGee, he plots forward. He's kind of like the man that Randa Marcos would have been at 170 pounds. He kind of keeps his hands...
He fights like the Tin Man.
Right out like this. He lands a couple of shots. He walks you forward. He tries to take you down. Like, Randa Marcos had a fun fight against Jessica Penne, so maybe we get that out of Court McGee here. But for McGee, very similar fight in, fight out. Jeremiah Wells is good offensive when he's wrestling. He's good when he's in his set positions. He's not a guy that's going to go, you know, submission over position. He's very much going to try and break you down. And he did wait a long time before he got that Blood Diamond submission, but he was able to land some ground and pound, soften him up. Very cerebral he is when he's in those top positions. When he's on his back, he can struggle. He can also struggle with his takedown defense as well. And when it comes to Wells with the striking, you mentioned it, the leg kicks, the body kicks, and he has good offensive striking, but it's really wonky, and I worry about his gas tank. Both of these guys, I know Wells has much less in terms of fights, but he is 35. He is late in the game. For Court McGee, 37. But Court McGee has a great gas tank, and he preserves it too as fights go on.
It's like if you light a peanut and a marshmallow on fire at the exact same time. The peanut will stay lit for much longer, and the marshmallow is just going to burn out, but it's going to look really bright while it does burn. Jeremiah Wells is the marshmallow in that. He is going to look really good when he does look good, but I do worry about his gas tank, especially in this matchup, because that's really the key anytime you're fighting Court McGee. Again, that is the #1 X factor when you're fighting a guy like Court McGee. Before I even think about what that fighter can do offensively to have success, I ask myself, can this fighter compete with Court McGee for 15 minutes? Because he's the type of fighter who can lose 2 rounds and 10-8 you in the third to at least eke out a draw. He's really good at doing stuff like that. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think Court McGee's going to go on a 3-fight win streak. And here's the thing about Jeremiah Wells, too, that not a lot of people are bringing up. He's only 2 years younger than Court McGee. This isn't like we have a much younger fighter in one corner and then a much older guy on the other side. Like, Court McGee has much more experience at the highest level, and I do think that's going to pay off.
We got to put you on the replay. I just said that. We just talked about that. We just hit on that. The odds in this fight, though, they're forever going to be in, they're going to be in my favor in this one. Now, Court McGee opened to +150 as an underdog, -120 is the favorite now. Jeremiah Wells opened to -175, -104 as it is. We have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprise to us there to you. I'm going to say over under 55% Court McGee.
I'll say Wells is the favorite.
You're saying Wells is the favorite? Well, Wells is with the fans. I mean, 2 finish wins in a row, I guess. 912 votes, 73% Wells, 54% by decision, 34% by knockout. For the 27% that have Court McGee, 83% by decision. Matt, I think Jeremiah Wells finishes Court McGee. It's only ever happened 1 time in his whole career. I think it's going to happen for the 2nd time coming up this weekend. I think Jeremiah Wells, again, he has the ability to kick out that lead leg of Court McGee. Court McGee switching stances, not something that's popular in a Court McGee fight. So for me, I do think Wells has that power. I think he also has the ability to get out of some of those bad positions against a guy like McGee. Thought Ramiz Brahimaj would have been able to do the same things in that fight. But again, we saw McGee was able to drop him early in that one and zap his gas tank and then just take over. It was a circle of life type moment. But I do think that Jeremiah Wells is going to be able to get the win against McGee. But again, I do agree with you. Like Court McGee does not go away in some of these fights.
And he fights in a safer way post-losing streak. I think that's the big key that people are kind of missing out on in this fight. Court McGee did make one minor adjustment in between his losing streak and his 2 most recent fights. He ducks his head more and throws with a little bit more power on the inside, and it has paid off to huge effect because now guys are worried a little bit more when they're backed up against the cage because he can sit down a little bit more on his shots. And I will say this, Court McGee's last 2 wins are not over the best guys in the best stages of their careers, but it's still better than beating Blood Diamond, who really no one has any idea about anyways. And Court McGee and Blood Diamond couldn't be any more different types of opponents. Like, they are polar opposites in every single category you can think of when it comes to mixed martial arts. I like Court McGee in this matchup, But it's kind of wild that I think Court McGee's going to win. But that also means that I think Court McGee's going to win 3 fights in a row at the age of 37, which is crazy if he's able to do so. But this should be a really fun fight.
Matt going with the Crusher Court McGee. I'm going to go with the guy who turned Blood Diamond into Mike Mathita. I'm going with Jeremiah Wells to get the win. We got some big-time fights left on this card, including a fight between Kevin Holland and Tim Means at 170. You got a big-time co-main event between Donald Cerrone and Joe Lozon. And in the main event, oh boy, it is a banger between Calvin Kattar and Josh Emmett. You're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.